the domination of the firstborn of hell. There are others who have said the same thing, not just Zachary. For instance, when the American author William Walsh visited Sister Lucia, the surviving seer of Fatima, he asked her if the whole world would fall under the communist yoke, and she said yes. He then said, "Does this include America?" And she replied, yes. Also, the extraordinary victim soul from Portugal, Alexandrina da Costa, who died on October the 19th, 1955. In a vision which God gave her in 1948, she saw a terrible scene of ruin and destruction, with dead souls lying in the debris of wrecked buildings, and snakes, representing mortal sins, slithering all over them. And then she heard a voice that told her this: "The destruction you have seen will come about when Marxism will have taken over the entire world." This is what we have to look forward to in the immediate future. Satan, continues Zachary, shrieks out and yells in triumph. The dragon's mouth opened and vomited forth hideous words, and on earth a profound silence reigned. Then I was troubled, and I wept, writes Zachary, and I cried out, "Lord, Lord, why have you abandoned the earth? Your arm, Lord, has its length diminished." And I heard these words, "Son of the prophets, lift up your eyes." And I raised my eyes, and I saw a great mystery. I saw a hand uplifted and stretched out. This hand was raised above the empire of Aquilon. It had come to a halt above it, and enveloped it on every side. And it was constantly being lowered, slowly, slowly. It seemed to be protecting it, but it was in fact threatening it, and mortal eyes could not see it. This immensely large, suspended and extended hand covered the dragon round about like a boundless vault, and it resembled the concavity of the heavens when they have been cleansed and purified by the winds. The hand covered the four corners of the world and was carried by the four winds. I see, writes Zachary, around the hand, furnaces of red coals, fiery, flashing thunderbolts, and a quantity of prompt and racing tempests. And the four winds trembled, and the tempests and the lightning and the pitiless burning coals held themselves ready and attentive, and they seemed to be waiting for a movement from the hand in order to hurl themselves down. But the hand didn't move, and the burning ministers stood and waited, watching, restless, eager, around the hand. Suddenly, below the uplifted hand, which was constantly being lowered, a menacing voice thundered out and said, "The dragon's hours are counted. Anger and vengeance are ready. The end approaches. There is no more mercy, no more time. The sword is coming." And the voice said, finally, "Woe to the empire of Aquilon. As the dragon commits her final iniquities, the hand of justice and vengeance, the hand of fury, which is that of outrage, long-suffering, is coming down and will fall. Woe to the empire of the north." What does this hand signify? Well, it tells us that communism is doomed, that this intrinsically evil prefiguration of the Antichrist is living its last hours of cruelty, injustice, dishonor, and hypocrisy, lies, and murder, and that the hand of God's justice, in the form of burning coals and fiery thunderbolts, hangs over communism's head, and will at the appointed time destroy it. The outcome is certain. Before the final downfall of the atheistic empire, which in its mad arrogance has defied God and abused his infinite mercy, Zachary sees Rome on the point of succumbing. On Lake Gennesareth, he says, that is Lake Tiberias, the bark of Peter seemed almost on the point of being carried away by the hurricane. The Patriarch of the Vatican bowed down before the tomb of the Apostle, seemed to feel the eternal crown falling from his head, and the divine tree of life itself, that is the cross, seemed to be about to be turned upside down. But then comes a great vision. On that day, says Zachary, I saw the Lord, provoked, rise up, armed with his sword. I saw the sword of vengeance come down several times, and the nations of the earth struck the dragon and applauded this vengeance, and the fire of indignation could not be put out, and nothing further could save the empire of Aquilon. There was an incredible silence, a stupefied and fearful silence for some instants. Then suddenly cries resounded, and applause from an innumerable multitude of nations from the setting to the rising sun, who said, This is the day of deliverance. The Lord is great. He is powerful. He is just. Blessed be the Lord. And France, daughter of glory, who helped the Lord the most in his work of justice, and who was, as it were, his right hand, applauded and said, Blessed be the Lord. France, in fact, has a special role to play in the establishing of world peace through the person of King Henry of the Cross, who is called the Great Monarch, and whose coming has been prophesied for over 14 centuries, and who will be the world leader. And Spain, holy Iberia, writes Zachary, noble and renowned, the ever-faithful daughter of the spouse of Christ, that is the Catholic Church, with her sacred standards and knightly troops. Her glory will be resurrected with the scion of an earlier branch, son of a new dynasty. Zachary also sees the conversion of England. He wrote, I see something that filled me with joy. Albion, the island, that is England, was caught in a terrible stranglehold, but after appalling catastrophes, she came back to her former faith and to her religion of yore. Italy, says Zachary, regenerated by her tribulations, will hear the voice of the patriarch, and will immediately and enthusiastically cry out with one voice, The crusade! The crusade! The Pope will, in fact, preach a crusade against the dragon. Several other nations, continues Zachary, until then blinded and asleep, will also awaken. For a while they will regard each other stupefied and astonished. Then suddenly, standing up, they will break the chains that they had had on their hands. They will tear away the blindfold that was covering their eyes. The hour was at hand. That is why all eyes were uncovered. Those who had been feeble became strong. Those who were in darkness received light and were converted to the Lord. All the nations who had flocked together at the sound of the patriarch's voice, that is, to the Pope's appeal, rejoiced exceedingly. Poland especially, says Zachary, noble daughter of heroes and martyrs, rejoiced and rose up with hands bared and fear inspiring. Then there will be peace. On the very same spot where the dragon had stood, a cross was planted in the earth, straight, radiant and powerful. And the cross had one arm pointed towards the east and the other to the west. And on the arm that pointed to the east, the word light was written. And on the arm that pointed to the west was written the word strength. And on the front of the cross a word was written, and its meaning was peace. Now as I contemplated these things, writes Zachary, carried away in admiration, I saw that all the places around the cross were little by little illuminated, and the light marched forward on all sides like the rays of the sun as it rises at dawn. And strength marched forward too. And the light was truth, and the strength virtue, and the light and the strength were salvation and peace, life and happiness. This final scene from Zachary's visions make one think of the famous prophecy of Saint Maximilian Kolbe, the Franciscan saint and martyr, who gave up his life for the father of a family in the death camp of Auschwitz during World War II, and who was canonized by Pope John Paul II. He said to a friend of his, "One day you will see the statue of the Immaculate Virgin Mary on top of the Kremlin." The Kremlin is that group of churches and palaces at the center of Moscow which have now been taken over by the communists, but which will one day become the center of the rebirth of Russia. Zachary mentions several nations which he said would share in Christ's triumphant renewal of the world. He mentions, for instance, that England will become Catholic again. This was also prophesied by Saint Jean-Marie Baptiste Vianney, the cure of Ars, who was appointed patron saint of all parish priests by Pope Pius XI. Saint Jean-Marie Vianney said to Monsignor Allathorne on the 14th of May 1854, Monsignor was the then Catholic Bishop of Birmingham, but Monsignor